Okay then, back to our series on some of the more trickier interview questions, I guess. So yesterday we looked at let's call this, and today we're going to look at prototypal inheritance. I don't just make these words up, they are real words, or they're at least real words in programming. I'm not quite sure whether prototypal is in the dictionary, but prototype is at least, yeah? No, we're not doing recursion, nope, so it's definitely not the same. So Gideon covered recursion a bit this morning, and you've got the 5 questions on recursion. But if you want to join that workshop, yes, that will get you the stream.
No, sorry, I was just looking at the copy.
Yeah.
You can ask Gideon.
Okay. So what did you say this one is?
Prototypal inheritance. So in other words,
Is the class?
it has something to do with classes, yeah. In other words, how do we inherit properties and methods from other objects in JavaScript? So I'll give you a couple of questions, and hopefully you've maybe asked these questions before, but in other words, have you ever wondered why we can just write, you can create an array and you can write array.reduce and it just works? Where does this reduce actually come from? I know you say, yeah, it's built into the JavaScript language, but where does it actually come from? How do we have access to that?
In the window.
It's definitely in the window object, yeah. Because, yeah, it's in the window object because we have the global object in the browser is the window object. The global object in Node will be something called global. But yeah, it will be attached to that object so that we can somehow access it. And then Mumtahin said, is it in the array.prototype? And the answer is yes, it's definitely inside of array.prototype. So if I just do a new snippet, just to show you what we mean by array.prototype. In fact, let's do it in the console. So there is the built-in array object, which is part of the window object, absolutely. And the array object has another object on it called prototype. And if we looked at that, inside, look, we've got a constructor function that will help us create a new array, give it some properties, and we've also got all of the methods listed: concat, copy within, fill, find. Interesting that filter's not there, maybe it's somewhere further down. Yeah, filter's further down. Flat, yeah, flat's a new one, by the way, new one this year, yeah, flat and flat map. So really useful if you've got nested arrays and you just want it all as a one-dimensional array, then it flattens out your array for you, so you don't have to worry about the nested values. So that would be really useful for, very similar to what we did this morning, but with an array instead of an object, to flatten out all of our values. So at least now we know where these methods are stored. They're stored in the array.prototype, but it still doesn't fully answer the question that why, when we create a new array, do we automatically have access to this array.prototype object? So, now I've got, oh no, good, it's still there. Yeah, so that will also be why things like the MDM documents, they don't list it just as array.reduce, they put array.prototype.reduce. Yeah, you might have seen that before and being quite curious why they list it like that. And that's because that's where the method is stored in the JavaScript language. Okay. So when we, by the way, if you don't know about this method, has own property. So that's just checking whether an object, let's just create a new object here. Sorry, we overuse the person object, but it's easy to grasp, right? So if this person's got a name, Mumtahin, and we ask whether our person object has its own property called name. So property is another word for key, yeah? So we're just checking whether name exists inside of our person object. If I return that now, do you think I'm going to get true or false? True. I agree with that. We do get true. However, if I checked, do we currently have age stored on Mumtahin? Will I get true or false? why is that so hard? Yeah, definitely false, right? There's nothing, no age property inside here, so we should get false. Yeah? If I did, I'm trying to think of a decent, what's a object method that you all know? No, that's a static method, so it's a little bit different, but a method that, say again? No. Okay. If you don't know, we can have a look, right? So we now know how to look at the object's prototype, so we can just do object.prototype, and we can see what methods we can check. Return, that should work, yeah. Okay, so they've got things like define getter, define setter, has own property, which is the one that I was just using. ToString, I guess, yeah. So there's not many, right, on object itself. So when we create a new object, they're fairly lightweight. There's not many properties that we can use inside. I guess, is prototype, value of? I'm just trying to show that if, maybe we'll do it with arrays in a second, but if we asked whether Mumtahin himself has a property called toLocalString, do you have local strings inside of you? They sound like worms. Do you think it's going to be true or false? Does Mumtahin person, does the person object have its own toLocalString property? No, it doesn't. However, it would have access to that if we did dot to, what was it called? toLocal. I'm not going to remember it for me. Yeah, like that. So it didn't throw an error, right? It just created a string of that object. So that means that Mumtahin does have access to this property, but it's not stored within his own object. So somehow he is inheriting that method. Yeah, and I'll show you with an array, because array is a bit easier because you know lots of array methods. So let's just call my array. Then we can ask, does my array actually has own property? Does it have its own property called reduce? We know we can do array.reduce, right? If we had a boring array of 1, 2, and 3, we tried to get the sum, like Gideon showed us how to this morning, or get the total, then we'd hope to end up with 6. But has my array got its own property called reduce? Based on the example of the object, we should say no, false. It doesn't have its own property called reduce. So it's inheriting it from the array.prototype, and it inherits it through the method known as prototypal inheritance. And that's because any new instance of an array that you create, this is just an array instance, it's set up behind the scenes to inherit from the built-in array object, or specifically array.prototype. That's how it has access to all of these methods. We can check what the upwards in the prototype chain is by using _proto. These are really catchy again, hey Zara? Catchy names. And we can see there that the prototype contains all of the methods that we want to inherit. So _proto looks up the prototype chain, and then we were saying we were looking at array.prototype. Prototype. Now, my array isn't going to have a prototype because no objects have yet descended from it. So that's undefined. But the parent array, the built-in array object, does have a prototype. Yeah, so this shows you what's being passed down, .prototype, and the double underscore proto shows you what's being inherited. Some people get those two mixed up, I guess because they're named quite similarly, but that would be the difference. So prototype, like that, and we should be able to see again all of those methods. So those two, they're the same object, but it's just how it's referenced based on what is in front. Yeah, so this gets passed down from array. So, let's do something even more that shows it clearer than that. So we can ask, does array.prototype, oh, is this going to work? Probably not, because it's an array. All right, yeah, that won't work.
Maybe on string.
What, turn it into a string? Maybe on a string. No, strings are different. You have no. Can't do it on a string, even though they're primitive. But maybe we could turn it into a string. All right. Let's see whether this works. I'm doubtful, to be honest, but I'm just trying to show that they're equivalent. So that's going to be equivalent to what underscore proto? What do I need to put in front of the proto? My array, exactly. Yeah. As I say, I'm doubtful whether this will work. Ah, nice. We do get a true. Yeah. So we've essentially proved that they are the same object just by stringifying it. Of course, I had to turn it into a string because we can't use triple equals to compare complex objects. Yeah, another weird quirk of JavaScript. So that does get true. Oh, okay. Maybe they already output it as a string for you. So, cool. Maybe they did do an update. Who knows? But I doubt it. Yeah. But yeah, so those two are the same. Prototype is what gets passed down, and proto is what is being inherited. Yeah, based on the object in front of it. Cool. So we've sort of worked out that objects don't have to have their own properties to be able to use things that look like properties, yeah? So the prototype chain works by, if I tried to do my array.reduce, what it does is it looks inside the myArray object and says, have you got something called reduce? MyArray says no, you better check somewhere else. Check further up the prototype chain. What's the next step up the prototype chain? Well, that is the array built-in object in JavaScript. So therefore it checks inside of the array.prototype object, and if it finds reduce, then it enables it to run the function. Let's create a couple of objects. And let's do so object.create is a way to create new objects, one of the older ways, and we can create a new object based on an existing object. So we said before, we've got a name and an age. Do you want to tell us your age, Mumtaheen, or shall I guess? 30. Okay. So we've got person 1. They've got a name and they've got an age. Person 2, if I just do object.create and I create a new object from person 1, and then I return person 2.age, will that be defined? Or will it be undefined, or will it be 30? 30. Because we've created essentially a copy of this object, or at least a reference to this object. So if Mumtahin person had an age, so should person 2. Let's run that. So we do get 30. But is this age stored inside of the person 2 object? No? Why not? Should be. In some languages it would be. In JavaScript we try and minimize the amount of memory that is used. So we're just pointing to person 1, saying, go on, yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because the person 1 and the person 2 is different, yeah? I mean,
Well, they have access at the moment to the same values,
but they are different.
but person 2, if you like, is just a shell that gets information from a different object.
Object 1 is stored in a memory, yes?
Object 1, yeah, is stored in memory. Person 1 is stored in memory, but person 2 is also technically stored in memory. It just hasn't got any of its own properties yet.
But it's different than 1.
Yeah, it's different than 1. Yeah. I think we might just have to pop up to the board afterwards, and I can draw you some nice boxes. But I couldn't find any good diagrams to. Before.
Do you know how to check how this exactly is stored in the memory?
What exactly how it's stored in the memory?
Yeah, because it's stored in the memory like some I don't know, some numbers, yeah, or I don't know what it is. ASCII.
Everything's numbers in the end, but I don't know exactly what form it gets stored in.
Okay.
To begin with, no.
Okay.
So if we check whether person 2 has an age property, do you think we're going to get true or false? Why true, Joshua? They have an equal value, but have we defined age anywhere inside of person 2? Or are we just saying, look, person 2, if you can't find the age property inside of your own object, then please look up to person 1, because you were created from person 1. You've been set up to inherit from person 1.
Because you said we, like in JavaScript, try to limit this version.
Yep, so we've only stored age inside of person 1. So person 2 hasn't got its own age property. So it should be false. Yeah? Oops, age is not defined. Sorry, yeah, so that needs to be passed in as a string, not a variable. So that's false, yeah? Person 2 hasn't got its age property. If we did person2.age now and give it that property, let's say someone else is 32, person 2 is 32, then it should now be true, right? Because we've given the property to person 2 and given it its own age. Still hasn't got a name. It inherits the name, Mumtahin. This is your future self, Mumtahin, in 2 years' time. Yeah. So we've managed to use object.create to set up a prototype chain so that one object can inherit from another. So if these values were just common values, you know, like we had animal 1. yeah. Mumtahin, you're just an animal. Maybe I should say mammal, something like that. M-A-M. That's not even good, but I don't know what I was getting at, and this doesn't really apply there, does it? Because there's lots of different animals. But if we said like the majority of animals had 4 legs, so it's good. Like if you're doing, I guess, biology and you're inheriting from various species, and species have got common characteristics, so you could have one species that has shared characteristics, and you just inherit those characteristics for each new animal that you create. Yeah, each new animal object that you create. And then only if this animal departs from the norm and has a different number of legs, could you set it to have a different number of legs. So maybe we're a bit rare, right? We now walk on 2 legs. We evolved at some stage not to use arms and legs to move, but now we just we became bipedal, exactly, right? Rather than being quadrupeds, we became bipeds. So something like that you could use it for. It's a terrible example, but hopefully you got the idea. How else? Actually, so if I change the value of person 2 dot legs, sorry, not person 2, animal 2. What's the value now of animal dot legs? Is it still 4 or has it changed to 2? Should be 4. I agree with that. Oh, what have I done wrong now? Because essentially, yeah, animal 2 is a child. It's what have I done? Oh, that's funny. And wow, where did that come from? Does that need to be a string? I forget now. Yeah, okay, good. So animal.legs still has 4 legs. So we can see that they are separate objects in the sense that they can have different values. And if we change the value of one, it doesn't automatically change the other. So they do have different locations in memory. They're not just pointing to the same object. If we didn't use object.create, and we did now, whatever it was, animal, how many legs has the first animal now got? Still 4? Or is that a different situation? Now it's 2. So this is another bit of a weird quirk of JavaScript, right? If we just put one object equal to another, they're sharing that space in memory. And if we update animal 2, that automatically updates this animal as well. So now we're going to end up with 2 legs for all the animals. So this might be why you want to create a brand new object and just inherit properties. So it gives you the option to store distinct values as opposed to making this weird little error and changing one object and overwriting all the other copies of it essentially. So you might see that on a common interview question or a board challenge as well. You know, they've set something up like this, change the value of one object, does it change the value of the other?
For line 8,
Yes?
is it the same as writing animal equals animal 2?
That animal equals animal 2. But animal's already been defined, right, up here. So it would be different.
Without the let.
Oh, without the let.
Yeah.
Animal equals animal 2. But then
Is that the same thing?
but then animal 2 hasn't been defined now.
And now animals equal
Yeah, animal 2's not been defined when you try to assign animal to be equal to it. I would have to first define animal 2. Yeah. I could even do that one, which is even more confusing, right? Object.create animal. So firstly you've created distinct objects, and then down here you set them essentially to be the same reference in memory. So no, they're different ways of creating objects, right? Object.create just creates a pointer to another object, and you can inherit values, but you have distinct properties. Whereas if you do it like that, then they're essentially pointing to the same place in memory, and if you change one, you are changing the other. So try not to do that. Try to use object.create, or of course we can use classes. Yeah, classes is another way to set up prototypal based inheritance. It's just syntax sugar for creating objects, really. That's all it's doing. So we could have a person class. And sorry, none of those, right? I write too many functions and not enough classes. We could have a constructor, and we could say it's dot legs. I don't know why I want legs. Equals 2. I don't know where I'm going to go with this example as well. I'm going to have to take legs away from people. It's not a very nice thing to do. Do you want any other properties on our person? No? Eyes? Usually 2? Yeah. Fair enough. Okay. If we have a Cyclops, this was my dad's nickname, by the way, because he lost his eye when he was young, so everyone called him Cyclops. We're really friendly, but okay. Do we even need a constructor? Well. So if we call super, oh, what else am I missing up here to set up that prototypal chain? It extends the keyword. Yes. Great stuff. So now we can inherit these properties, and let's so my dad is a newly created Cyclops. Oh, in fact, if it's a Cyclops, then we need to overwrite the number of eyes. So in the constructor, we can say this dot eyes equals 1. Okay. So try and give your classes capital and then just your variables. Yeah, I'm not making you a Cyclops, by the way, from team. You're okay. You've still got both of your eyes. Okay. So we've got a person with legs and eyes. Great stuff. And then Cyclops, unfortunately, only has one eye. We create some variables there. And again, I guess we could ask, does Gray's dad have a property called legs or not? So how would we check whether Gray's dad has a property? Yeah, so we can do has own property. So has own property is one of these object methods that we can inherit from the object prototype, so it's available on almost everything in JavaScript. I'll clarify that sentence in a second. So Gray's dad dot has own property, and we are searching for legs in this case, right? True or false? What do you think? Yeah? Because we haven't got it here, right? Bit different. Let's just put random thing in there just to check that we're always getting. Yep. So this time, Gray's dad does have legs. Why? So it's not set it up quite the same, right? Because we called super, and that does this dot legs, it creates its own property. If we had,
So what does the super function do?
invokes essentially the constructor of the parent. So if we had this dot legs equals
This is
to there.
inheritance, yes?
Oh, not this dot legs, just legs. Really? Where's the new cyclops? Alright, maybe I don't fully understand what's going on with classes then.
Yeah, I think you can inheritance everything now.
Yeah, I mean,
Just telling us.
essentially with classes, yeah, it's saying us that we're inheriting everything and we're creating all our own copies, so it's a full copy of an object. Yeah, I didn't actually know that, sorry. I tend not to use classes, but alright, I don't know where else to go with classes then, based on that. Any questions, and we can experiment with them now?
So it's like this we can just inheritance all properties, yes?
Yeah, we can copy all properties.
Yes, so we don't have to just build another object, we can just copy.
Yep. I would have thought that took up more space in memory than doing it this way. Okay. So we should still get 2 here. If we had it outside, do we still get 2? I find that a little bit weird. I do.
Have we finished, Gray?
Yeah, I guess we can finish if you got no questions. Yeah.